To millions of fans, the stars of Mountain Men were more than just television personalities. They were symbols of resilience, determination, and a way of life rooted in courage and simplicity. From icy Alaskan rivers to the towering peaks of Montana, from the dense Appalachian forests to the deserts of New Mexico, these men and women showed us what it meant to carve out an existence against the odds. But behind the rugged beards, weathered hands, and stoic expressions, there was something more. Hearts filled with passion, loyalty, and dreams. They were fathers, brothers, mentors, and friends. They weren't just surviving in the wilderness, they were teaching us all how to live. And yet, the wilderness has its price. Some of the most beloved cast members of Mountain Men have faced tragedies that left fans heartbroken. They taught us about strength, but their untimely deaths revealed a painful truth: even legends are not invincible. This is the story of 7 cast members who captured our hearts and tragically passed away. Their journeys were raw, inspiring, and unforgettable. Their deaths shocked the world, but their legacies continue to echo across mountains, rivers, and forests where their spirits still seem to walk. As you watch until the end, you will see not just the pain of loss but also the power of legacy. The lessons these men left behind, the families who carry their memory, and the fans who will never forget. Long before Mountain Men became a television phenomenon, the American frontier had already etched itself into the nation's cultural identity. Tales of Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, and Jim Bridger filled history books and folklore alike. These were men who thrived in isolation, surviving against all odds in an untamed wilderness. By the 21st century, many believed such a life no longer existed. That is, until Mountain Men reminded the world otherwise. The series premiered on May 31, 2012, on the History Channel, offering audiences a glimpse into the lives of people who had chosen to reject the comforts of modern society. Each cast member had their own reasons for living off the grid. For some, it was a deep love of nature. For others, it was necessity, tradition, or the pursuit of independence. Together, they painted a portrait of a lifestyle that many had thought was long gone. Eustace Conway, one of the show's most iconic figures, embodied this spirit. A naturalist and teacher, Eustace had spent decades living in the mountains of North Carolina, founding Turtle Island Preserve as a space to teach others the old ways of survival. His close friend and fellow cast member, Preston Roberts, would later become one of the most beloved figures on the show. Then there was Tom Orr, a retired rodeo cowboy who carved out a life in Montana's Yaak Valley with his wife, Nancy. Living nearly 2 decades ahead of the rest of the world in self-sufficiency, Tom became the heart of the series, showing audiences what it truly meant to live in harmony with the wilderness. Marty Mayorotto, meanwhile, brought viewers into the frozen expanses of Alaska. A trapper by trade, Marty showcased the brutal reality of sub-zero winters and the constant threat of isolation. His story resonated with fans who admired his quiet strength and unyielding spirit. The show also introduced viewers to Rich Lewis, the lion hunter from Montana, who protected his community from predators, and George Micho, a trapper from Idaho whose traditional lifestyle harkened back to America's earliest frontiersmen. Later, younger faces like Jake Herac would join the cast, representing a new generation ready to take on the challenges of wilderness living. What set Mountain Men apart from other reality shows was its authenticity. These were not dramatized characters following a script. Every moment captured on screen was real: the hunger, the danger, the victories, and the heartbreak. Fans weren't just watching a television show, they were watching real lives unfold in real time. But with authenticity came vulnerability. Living so close to nature meant living close to mortality. The cast was constantly at risk, whether from illness, injury, or the unforgiving elements. And when tragedy did strike, it was not just a headline, it was a deeply personal loss for all who had watched, learned from, and admired these men. As Mountain Men grew in popularity, audiences formed bonds with the cast members, seeing them almost as family. They were teachers, storytellers, and symbols of a simpler life many longed for. So when news spread that one of them had passed away, it was felt not just in the wilderness, but in living rooms around the world. This is where our journey begins, by stepping into the world of Mountain Men, understanding what made it so special, and preparing ourselves to honor the men whose absence left a silence in the mountains they once called home. The appeal of Mountain Men has always rested on one simple truth: survival is never guaranteed. For millions of fans, the show provided an escape from the modern world. But for the men and women who lived it, wilderness survival was not a television storyline, it was life itself, with consequences that could be as final as they were sudden. In the mountains, valleys, and forests of North America, nature holds incredible beauty. A sunrise over a snow-capped ridge or the quiet song of the wind through pine trees can bring peace beyond measure. But the same environment that offers such serenity can turn hostile in the blink of an eye. For the Mountain Men, the wilderness was both a friend and a foe, one that demanded constant vigilance. Winters in Montana's Yaak Valley, where Tom lived with his wife Nancy, were some of the most brutal on Earth. Temperatures plunged well below zero, snow piled in feet rather than inches, and the risk of frostbite or hypothermia was constant. Every winter became a race against time, stockpiling enough firewood, drying enough meat, and ensuring water supplies would not freeze over. A simple mistake, like misjudging the weather or slipping on ice, could cost a life. In Alaska, the dangers were even more unforgiving. Marty Mayaroto, who spent months alone in a trapline cabin, braved temperatures so cold that exposed skin could freeze in seconds. Isolation itself was a threat. If something went wrong, if he became injured, ran out of supplies, or suffered from illness, help was hundreds of miles away. In such circumstances, self-reliance was not an option, it was a necessity. Predators added yet another layer of risk. Rich Lewis in Montana was known for his battles with mountain lions. While he often tracked them to protect his community, he also lived under the constant threat that one wrong move could make him prey instead of hunter. Wolves, bears, and other predators roamed freely across the landscapes where the mountain men lived, testing their courage and skill at every turn. But not all dangers came from wildlife or weather. The most relentless threat of all was time. Living off the land required endless physical labor. Chopping wood, hauling supplies, setting traps, building shelters, and hunting for food. It was a lifestyle that took a toll on the body, wearing down joints, muscles, and even hearts. Illnesses that might have been manageable in the city often became life-threatening in the wilderness, where medical help was far away and sometimes entirely out of reach. For cast members like Preston Roberts, who battled cancer, the irony was heartbreaking. A man who had survived the wilderness for decades could not escape the one enemy no skill or tool could fend off. His passing was a stark reminder that while wilderness living required courage, the fragility of human life remained unchanged. These realities made mountain men more than just entertainment. Fans didn't tune in to watch scripted drama or manufactured conflicts. They watched because they knew that what they were seeing was real: the triumphs, the struggles, and the risks. Every winter storm, every mountain lion encounter, every failed hunt carried genuine consequences. And when tragedy struck off-screen, the heartbreak was magnified because it wasn't just a character we had lost, it was a real human being. This is the paradox of mountain men. While audiences admired the freedom and independence of this lifestyle, they also saw its relentless dangers. For the cast, every day was a test of survival, and for some, those tests eventually proved too much. As we turn to the stories of the 7 beloved cast members who passed away, we must keep these harsh realities in mind. Their deaths were not isolated tragedies, but reminders of the risks they had lived with every single day. They lived fully, bravely, and authentically, but they also lived close to the edge, where nature could claim them at any time. The wilderness gave them a life of purpose, but it also gave them their final chapter. And for many fans, that is what makes their stories both heartbreaking and unforgettable. Of all the faces to ever grace mountain men, few touched the hearts of viewers as deeply as Preston Roberts. From the moment he appeared on screen alongside his lifelong friend Eustace Conway, it was clear that Preston was not just another rugged outdoorsman. He was a man of depth, kindness, and quiet wisdom. His presence transformed the show into something far more than survival television. He reminded audiences that even in the harshest environments, compassion and humanity had a place. Born on July 17, 1957, in Westfield, New Jersey, Preston grew up with a fascination for the natural world. That passion would define his entire life. He attended Appalachian State University, where he studied art education. But his calling went far beyond classrooms or studios. Preston was drawn to a way of life that fused his love of nature with his desire to teach and inspire others. He met Eustace Conway, another man destined for wilderness legend, early in life, and the two formed a bond that would last a lifetime. Together, they envisioned Turtle Island Preserve, a 1,000-acre sanctuary in North Carolina dedicated to teaching traditional skills: hunting, fishing, woodworking, blacksmithing, and sustainable living. It was here that Preston truly came into his own, not only as a survivalist but as a mentor. Thousands of children and adults passed through Turtle Island's programs, carrying with them lessons they would never forget. When Mountain Men began, Preston's role was natural. He wasn't on the show for fame or recognition. He was there because the cameras had come to him, to capture a way of life he was already living. Viewers immediately gravitated toward his calm demeanor, his gentle humor, and the way he balanced toughness with tenderness. Unlike the stereotypical rugged mountain man, Preston showed that strength could coexist with kindness. Fans remember the way he and Eustace worked side by side, felling trees, building cabins, and facing the challenges of Appalachian living with patience and grit. Their friendship wasn't scripted, it was real, forged through decades of shared struggles and triumphs. When one faltered, the other was there to steady him. Their brotherhood was a centerpiece of the show and one of the reasons fans kept coming back. But behind the cameras, Preston lived a full and meaningful life. He was an artist, creating beautiful paintings and crafts that reflected his love of nature. He was also a devoted husband to his wife, Kathleen, and a proud father of 3 sons. To those who knew him personally, he was not just a mountain man. He was a teacher, a mentor, a father, a husband, and a friend. Then, in 2017, tragedy struck. Preston was diagnosed with an aggressive and inoperable liver cancer. The news shocked everyone around him, for here was a man who seemed larger than life, someone who had weathered every storm nature could throw at him. Yet no amount of strength or wilderness skill could shield him from the relentless grip of illness. On July 24, 2017, just 3 weeks after his 60th birthday, Preston Roberts passed away in the arms of his beloved wife. The speed of his decline was devastating, leaving friends, family, and fans in stunned silence. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Eustace Conway, his lifelong brother in spirit, was crushed. At Turtle Island Preserve, memorials poured in from across the world. Fans who had never met Preston in person wrote letters, posted tributes, and created artwork in his honor. They spoke of how he had inspired them to live differently, to embrace simplicity, to be kinder, and to value the natural world. Perhaps most touching of all were the stories from his students. Many who had passed through his classes or programs shared how Preston's words had changed their lives. Some had pursued careers in teaching or conservation because of him. Others said he had given them confidence when no one else had believed in them. Preston's death left a hole in mountain men that could never truly be filled. The series continued, but his absence was always felt. When Eustace appeared on screen in later seasons, viewers could see the weight of loss in his eyes. For him, mountain men would never be the same without Preston by his side. Yet even in death, Preston's spirit endures. Turtle Island Preserve continues to teach, inspire, and carry forward the vision he and Eustace began together. His family, though devastated by loss, keeps his memory alive through stories, traditions, and love. And for millions of fans, his episodes remain a lasting reminder of what it means to live authentically, to give generously, and to walk through the world with both strength and compassion. Preston Roberts' story is not just one of tragedy, it is one of legacy. He lived fully, he loved deeply, and he left behind a world better than he found it. And though his time was cut short, his influence will echo for generations to come. In the rugged wilderness of Idaho, where rivers cut through valleys and forests stretch for endless miles, George Micho carved out a life that felt like a direct continuation of America's frontier past. A seasoned trapper and craftsman, George was a man who seemed as though he had stepped straight out of the 1800s. When he appeared on Mountain Men, he immediately fascinated viewers, not just with his knowledge of survival, but with his almost spiritual connection to the land. George grew up in Idaho, and from an early age, he was drawn to the woods and waterways that surrounded him. He became a skilled trapper, living a life of independence and self-reliance that few could even imagine. Unlike many who sought the wilderness for escape, George lived it as his daily reality. He knew the ways of the animals, the rhythm of the seasons, and the unspoken language of the wild. On Mountain Men, George was known for his trapping skills, his resourcefulness, and his ability to improvise in the harshest conditions. Viewers admired the way he crafted canoes, shelters, and tools out of whatever nature provided. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the dangers he faced daily, whether it was unpredictable weather, scarce food, or encounters with predators. But George was more than a survivalist, he was a storyteller. He spoke with reverence about the land and with wisdom about the old ways that so few still practiced. Fans connected with him not only because of his skills, but because of his authenticity. He wasn't playing a role, he was simply living his life, and the cameras happened to capture it. After his time on the show, George continued his trapping and teaching lifestyle, often demonstrating traditional methods at cultural gatherings and outdoor events. He became a living link to America's past, admired by those who still valued the pioneering spirit. Then came the news that stunned fans: George Micho had passed away. His death, though not splashed across headlines, was deeply felt by those who had admired him. The details were quiet, as his life had been, but the loss was immense. For many, it felt as if a piece of history itself had slipped away. Fans took to online forums and tribute pages, sharing memories of his time on Mountain Men and reflecting on how his lifestyle had inspired them to try their hand at trapping, canoe building, or simply spending more time outdoors. Fellow cast members expressed their sorrow, remembering George not just as a survivalist, but as a man of integrity and heart. His passing reminded viewers that the wilderness, while beautiful, is also unforgiving. It demands everything, and in George's case, it ultimately took a man who had given it his entire life. Yet his legacy remains, not just on film, but in the countless people he inspired to reconnect with the natural world. If George Micho represented the old guard of mountain men, then Jake Herac embodied the new. Young, strong, and fearless, Jake was one of the rising stars of mountain men. Viewers were drawn to his energy and his daring, especially in his relentless pursuit of mountain lions. He was bold, adventurous, and passionate about his work, bringing a new sense of danger and excitement to the series. Jake grew up in the Pacific Northwest and was no stranger to the outdoors. With a natural talent for tracking and hunting, he soon became an expert in one of the most difficult and dangerous fields of survival, mountain lion hunting. His work wasn't just about the thrill of the chase, it was about protecting ranchers and communities from predators that could devastate livestock or, in rare cases, threaten human lives. On the show, Jake's segments were some of the most gripping. Audiences watched him climb steep ridges, follow tracks across frozen ground, and rely on his loyal hounds to corner predators. Every hunt carried enormous risk. Mountain lions are powerful, unpredictable, and deadly. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and Jake's life could be on the line. Fans admired his courage, but they also saw in him a warmth and joy that made him stand out. He often spoke of his love for the wilderness and the respect he held for the animals he tracked. There was a humility about him that resonated deeply with viewers. That is why his untimely death came as such a shock. Jake Herac was still young, still full of life, still at the beginning of what many believed would be a long journey as one of America's great modern outdoorsmen. The exact circumstances of his passing were tragic, an accident that underscored the constant risks of the lifestyle he lived. When news of Jake's death spread, fans were devastated. Social media filled with tributes, photos, and heartfelt messages. Many spoke of how Jake had become their favorite on the show, the one they tuned in to see, the one who reminded them that a younger generation still cared about the old ways of living with nature. His death felt not only like the loss of a person, but the loss of potential, a future cut tragically short. For fellow cast members, the loss of Jake was painful. He represented hope, continuity, and the idea that wilderness living would carry on with new strength. His passing left behind not only grief but also a haunting reminder. No matter how skilled, no matter how strong, the wilderness gives no guarantees. In the frozen wilderness of Alaska, Morgan Beasley carved out a life unlike any other cast member. When he joined Mountain Men, audiences were immediately intrigued. With long hair, a quiet demeanor, and a fierce independence, Morgan became a symbol of true self-reliance. Unlike many who sought companionship or community, Morgan seemed content with solitude, choosing instead to build his life in near-total isolation. Originally from Idaho, Morgan had left behind a more conventional life to pursue the wilderness on his own terms. When he arrived in Alaska, he set about creating a homestead from scratch, building with his own two hands, hauling supplies on foot, and braving conditions that would break most men. Viewers admired his grit, his patience, and his unwavering determination. One of the most compelling aspects of Morgan's story was his partnership with Margaret Stern, a fellow homesteader who shared his love of the wilderness. Together, they represented not only survival but a vision of a different kind of life, one rooted in simplicity, hard work, and harmony with nature. But as Morgan's popularity grew, so too did rumors. For years, whispers circulated online that Morgan Beasley had died. Social media posts, blogs, and even false news reports claimed that he had perished in the Alaskan wilderness, either through accident, exposure, or wildlife attack. These rumors spread rapidly, fueled by his elusive lifestyle and the fact that he rarely appeared in public or online. Fans were devastated each time such reports surfaced, fearing the worst for a man they had come to admire so deeply. Yet time and again, the rumors were proven false. Morgan had not died, he was simply living the life he had always chosen, remote, private, and away from the spotlight. The persistence of these stories highlights an important truth about the Mountain Men cast. Their lives were so dangerous, so extreme, that death always seemed a possibility. Fans knew that the risks they faced were real, and so when whispers of tragedy emerged, they were all too believable. In Morgan's case, however, the rumors served as a reminder of how myth and reality often blur when it comes to figures who live outside the boundaries of modern life. While others on the show had indeed passed away, Morgan's story was not one of death but of survival, perseverance, and the choice to live far beyond the reach of society. Yet even with the truth known, fans remain haunted by the fragility of his existence. They understand that every day he spends in Alaska is a battle against the elements, and that one day, perhaps, the rumors may prove true. But for now, Morgan Beasley endures, a living testament to the unbreakable bond between man and wilderness. If there was ever a man who embodied the spirit of raw courage on Mountain Men, it was Rich Lewis. Living in Ruby Valley, Montana, Rich became known to viewers as the Lion Hunter, a title that reflected not only his skill but his fearless heart. Few on the show faced danger as directly as Rich did, and fans quickly came to respect him as a man who carried the traditions of the Old West into the modern day. Rich lived in one of the most rugged and predator-filled parts of the American wilderness. While most survivalists worried about finding food, building shelter, or enduring the winter, Rich added another responsibility: protecting his community from mountain lions. For ranchers and small towns scattered across Montana, lions posed a real threat to livestock and, on rare occasions, people. It was men like Rich who ensured the balance between human life and predator survival. Accompanied by his loyal pack of hounds, Rich tracked mountain lions across snow-dusted ridges, icy rivers, and dense pine forests. The bond between him and his dogs was something viewers never forgot. They weren't just working animals. They were his companions, his partners, and in many ways his family. Together, they faced life-threatening hunts where one misstep could spell disaster. What made Rich so captivating was not just his bravery, but his humility. He never hunted for sport. His actions were always about necessity and protection, and he often spoke with respect about the predators he tracked. Fans admired this balance, his ability to fight danger head-on while also honoring the natural order of the wilderness. After 6 seasons, Rich quietly left Mountain Men. The grueling physical demands of tracking predators through unforgiving terrain had taken a toll on his body. Viewers missed his presence, but many understood that age and wear eventually catch up, even with the toughest of men. Then, in later years, the news arrived that Rich Lewis had passed away. For longtime fans, it was a heavy blow. Rich had seemed indestructible, the kind of man who would never be defeated by nature. His death reminded everyone that even legends must one day rest. Tributes poured in from all corners of the Mountain Men community. Fans remembered his lion hunts, his bond with his dogs, and his quiet sense of honor. To many, Rich represented the last of a dying breed, a true American outdoorsman whose courage and integrity made him unforgettable. His legacy lives on, not just in the episodes he left behind, but in the inspiration he gave to those who continue to live by the code of the wilderness. While not as widely known as some of the central stars, Paul Anchak's presence in the Mountain Men world left its own quiet but meaningful mark. Paul was part of the broader wilderness culture that surrounded the show. A man who lived by the same values of grit, independence, and harmony with nature. Paul grew up with a deep respect for the outdoors. Hunting, fishing, and self-reliance weren't hobbies for him, they were a way of life. Though his screen time was brief compared to figures like Tom or Eustace Conway, Paul embodied the very essence of what Mountain Men celebrated: ordinary people doing extraordinary things in extraordinary places. Friends and family often described Paul as someone who was generous with his knowledge. Much like Preston Roberts, he had a gift for teaching and mentoring others. Whether it was showing someone how to properly handle a rifle, how to track an animal through snow, or how to remain calm when nature turned hostile, Paul believed in passing down skills that had been handed to him. His life was tragically cut short. News of his passing hit those who knew him hardest, but even fans of the show, who had only seen glimpses of him, felt the sorrow. His death reminded everyone of the risks tied to this lifestyle: accidents, harsh weather, or simply the strain of living so close to the edge. While Paul Anchak may not have become a household name like Tom or Eustace, his legacy is part of the larger fabric of Mountain Men. He represented the countless men and women who live quietly in the wilderness, away from the spotlight, yet whose lives are just as rich, dangerous, and inspiring. Remembering Paul is a reminder that the Mountain Men's story is bigger than the cast. It is about a way of life that values courage, resilience, and self-sufficiency. For every face that appeared regularly on Mountain Men, there were others who slipped in and out of the series quietly. Some were friends, family, or local neighbors who helped cast members survive the harsh realities of wilderness living. Others were members of the crew who braved the same elements to capture the stories on film. Their contributions may not have always been highlighted, but without them, Mountain Men would not have been the show it became. Fans often remember figures like Marty Maiorato's brother, who occasionally appeared alongside him in Alaska, or members of Eustace Conway's Turtle Island community who lent their hands and hearts to projects. These individuals might not have been in the spotlight, but they were part of the living world of Mountain Men. Some of these supporting figures have since passed away, their names not always carried into headlines, but mourned deeply within their own communities. Their absence reminds us that the wilderness way of life is filled with quiet heroes, people who teach, guide, protect, and live humbly by the same principles as the stars of the show. Even behind the camera, crew members faced enormous risks. Carrying heavy equipment through snowstorms, navigating icy rivers, or following the cast into predator territory was not without danger. A few who were part of the production over the years have also passed on, leaving behind their own mark on the legacy of Mountain Men. This remembrance is a tribute to those whose names may not be etched in the spotlight, but whose lives and sacrifices were every bit as real. They were part of the community, and in honoring them, we honor the spirit of Mountain Men itself. If you were moved by the lives and legacies of these remarkable mountain men, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who love the show, and subscribe to our channel for more videos. Your support keeps these memories alive.